time. And now, once again, I'm going to introduce you to Romeo. Again and again, this is what I say. It is thanks to the generosity of the Key Biscayne Community Foundation that we can gather here today and have all these amazing programs because they make that possible for us.
Thank you, Roxy. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. It looks like we have a pretty full house. That's really exciting. Today, for those of you that don't know, I don't think there's anybody here that doesn't. My name is Ramya. I'm the Director of Environmental Science for the Key Biscayne Community Foundation. For the last 2 months, you've heard me speak, and today you get a break from me. We have Hannah McDougall from Pelican Harbor Seabird Station. She is the Director of Communications. She also brought a colleague, Rosella? Yes, correct. And she's going to speak to you about the animal rehab that they do and all of the really, really great work that they do to help the native animals here in Miami. And she also brought some special friends to introduce you to later. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Hannah.
Wonderful. All right, good morning, good afternoon, ladies and a couple gentlemen. My name is Hannah. Again, I'm the Director of Communications at Pelican Harbor Seabird Station. By a raise of hands, who has heard of us before? Oh, that makes me so happy. So welcome back for those who have heard of us or maybe visited us before, and for those who may not know who we are and our mission. We are dedicated to the rescue, rehabilitation, and release of Miami's sick, injured, or orphaned wildlife. So what that means is you bring your cat or your dog to the vet when they're feeling sick. We are the vet for any wildlife. So maybe a baby squirrel that fell from a tree during a storm, a pelican that got entangled in fishing hook and line, a hawk that has a broken wing, any kind of native wildlife you can imagine in Miami. We are a fully nonprofit organization, and we have vets and certified rehabilitators on staff. We do everything from blood transfusions to x-rays and surgeries, very kind of state-of-the-art stuff. We've been around 40 years, 1980, so over 40 years. We began with just a houseboat and a pelican. Our founders here, Harry and Darlene Kelton, were a wonderful retired couple that lived in Pelican Harbor Marina. And one day they came across a pelican kind of hobbling across the causeway. They figured that's a little weird, so they went, scooped him up, and found that he was completely entangled in fishing line, really skinny because not able to fly or fish. So they brought him back to their houseboat, and they had a veterinarian friend who was able to come over, kind of check out the bird, gave them some advice. They actually kept it in their houseboat in their bathtub for a couple of days, feeding him fish, getting him strengthened up and ready to go back out to the wild. And he was able to be released, but over the weeks they kind of became known as the pelican people. A lot of these pelicans were still being found sick or injured, a lot of hook and line injuries. So you can see we really kind of started bare bones. We have little kiddie pools. It was just chain link fence. They don't even have roofs on them. They kind of decided if a pelican's strong enough to get it out of the 3-foot fence, then he's strong enough to get released. So we definitely don't do that anymore. But just over the last 40 years, we've really, really grown and evolved as a very state-of-the-art wildlife center now. We've treated over 42,000 patients in our history. We average around 2,000 animals every single year. So that's around 5 new patients every single day coming through our doors. And at any given time, we have around 100 animals in our care. So very, very busy. Many of these are small orphaned mammals that need to be fed 4 times a day, every day. So we're kept very busy. And you can see here over 200 species as well. So when we first started, for the first 20 years even, it was really primarily just pelicans, maybe a couple hundred a year, kind of, small operations. Things really started ramping up, especially in the 2000s. So we treat all native wildlife, of course pelicans still, but your beautiful osprey, terns, opossums like I mentioned, some mammals, reptiles as well, birds of prey. We do hawks, we've done bald eagles, all kinds of gulls. So we see an incredibly wide variety of wildlife at our hospital as well. So we do only treat native species. We do not We don't have the ability to treat any non-native or introduced species. For example, Muscovy ducks are prolific around Miami, but they're actually not native to the area. They originated from Mexico and South America. Same with pigeons. Pigeons are actually from Europe originally, same with starlings. Starlings is kind of an interesting story of how they got here. Someone, in the 1900s, and there was a man lived in New York, a very big fan of Shakespeare. He decided it would be super cool if all of the birds mentioned in any of Shakespeare's plays were all in Central Park so that he could see them and enjoy them. So he brought one pair, a female and a male, one pair over from Europe, put it in Central Park, and they are now one of the most prolific non-native species in the entire United States. So you can really see, and I'm sure you've heard all about the Everglades, all of the snakes in the Everglades. So the reason we don't treat them is, one, just the environmental impacts. These guys are going to be out-competing our native species for territory, for food. There's already not enough great space for our wildlife here, definitely not enough food to go around. They can predate our native species, they can cause or carry disease. But also, it's not actually legal for us to treat them. Since we treat migratory birds, we need to have a federal migratory bird permit, and that permit prohibits us from releasing any animal that is not native to the state of Florida. But we do have lots of resources. We get pigeon calls and peacock calls all the time, so we refer them to veterinarians. So the animals are able to get care, just not with them. And this kind of shows our almost exponential growth here over the years, just with a couple hundred when Harry and Darlene first started out in the 80s and 90s, now to over 2,000 animals every single year. And 65% of which are migratory. So these are all a bunch of different kind of warblers we have, especially here on Key Biscayne. I'm sure you see tons of warblers because they are migrating right now, actually, as their spring migration. So we are located along the Atlantic Flyway, which is just a historic flyway migration path that birds take on the East Coast. And you can see it really bottlenecks right here in South Florida. And we're the very last stop-off point before birds head to the Caribbean, South America. Most birds do this just in one go. It's incredible. These teeny tiny warblers, they will go from South Florida like all the way down to South America in like one just straight shot. And sometimes they'll even lose up to like half of their body weight. So they need to get like super bulked up, and they use so much energy that they just burn like half of their body weight in fat and energy. So that's another big reason as well that native plants are so important, because these birds, they need a lot of fuel to be able to make that journey. One of the most common reasons for admission, especially right now, are window strikes. So has anyone ever had a bird hit their window? I have, yeah. Yeah, so sometimes they do, they'll kind of get a little dazed and shocked and then go right on. But these birds, especially, they're used to doing this for millions and millions and millions of years, and now all of a sudden in the last 200 years, there's nothing but glass buildings in Miami, right? It's like the very sexy, new, it's everything's glass paned and it's clean and it's Miami. But birds, at a certain time of day especially, they cannot tell the difference between sky. This is actually a reflection of this tree. So these birds, these teeny tiny little birds, their skulls are they're really this big. Their skulls are as thick as a piece of tissue paper. And if they're flying 15, 20 miles an hour right into this window, it spells disaster for a lot of them. So this number always blows my mind. 1 billion birds a year. That's a year with a B, billion. That's just in North America. Are killed by window strikes every year. So that's not just the amount that are striking windows, that's the amount that are killed due to window strikes every year. But there are some things we can do. It's not all sad. There are some things we can do to help mitigate this. Sharpie highlighter, actually. If you get a little highlighter and you make tiny dots. They have to be around an inch apart. Dots on your windows. The birds have a different way of seeing light in the environment, so that Sharpie to them is like bright, like stop, stop, stop. Don't go here. So that actually helps a lot, and at the end of the migration season, you can barely even see it, but if you want, you just get some Windex, comes right off. You can get some scare tape, same thing that keeps away, things from around your bird feeder. It's just kind of tape that when it shines in the light, it deters birds again. Some people even go so far as to putting up these nice little strings here. There is also bird-friendly glass. It is a little more expensive than glass, so most contractors opt not to use it. There are some incredibly bird-friendly places in North America, Canada being one of them, especially Toronto. They actually passed an ordinance that going forward from a certain point, all buildings have to only be a certain percent glass. The rest has to be hard wall. And if you are using glass, it must be bird safe. So again, they have this very thin UV layer in it that we can completely see through. Nothing, no difference, still a window. But the birds see it as an obstacle, so they will not hit into it. So window strikes, really, really big problem we see. Hook and line injuries are still a problem. We had 60 patients in 2023. And so if you see here, this pelican here actually swallowed 3 massive hooks and a big metal lead line as well. And this is especially a big Miami problem. It's a tourist destination. People love to fish. You can fish all year round here. And so these birds are very used to being around people. Fishermen will often feed them carcasses, or you're reeling in a live fish. A pelican's going to be interested by that. Crazy story as well, kind of segue here. But we just rescued a pelican 2 weeks ago that had swallowed someone's entire bag of bait. It was a Ziploc bag, like a sandwich bag. It was on the news 2 days ago on Channel 10. And the only reason that we were able to rescue that bird is because someone physically saw it, called us up, and we were able to get the bird. Because it was so kind of used to people and tame, we were able to kind of lure it in and grab it. And it was able to regurgitate the bag a couple days later, but it's not just hook and line, it's anything. It's these lures that look like fish. But yeah, that pelican just completely, the entire bag just down his gullet. So just ways that you can help prevent this is always properly disposing of fishing line and hooks in marked containers. Almost every single pier has a specific area if you have excess line, if maybe your line broke and now it's floating out there. There's certain receptacles you can put it in. Never, ever, ever feeding or disposing of scraps off of the dock. That's also completely unenforced, but it is also against Florida ordinance to do that. You can't put your scraps out unless you're far enough out into sea. And that, again, because the scraps are going to just bring these pelicans in. They know, oh, this is great. This is an easy meal. I'm always going to be hanging around this pier. And the more you're around people, the more human-animal interaction there is, and the more, cause of injury as well. Cat attacks are another very big one. So you thought that 1 billion number was big. This, double, 2 billion birds, again, just in North America, every year, are killed by some domestic sometimes, like outdoor domestic cats, but also they're mostly feral cat populations. I know on Miami Beach this is also a really big problem, but there's actually, I think, over 10 species that their extinction is directly caused by feral cats. So over 10 different species are actually extinct just because of feral cats. And that's because they have a very strong hunting instinct. If you have cats, they love the little feather toys and the bells. But what's even more awful is a lot of times they'll kill the birds. It's, their instinct, they think it's fun, and then they're not even, if you're gonna at least kill something, like in the wild, maybe you should eat it, like a lion at least, eats its prey. But the cats usually just kind of leave it. So we recommend not feeding any feral cat colonies. And then if you do have your own cat, just keeping it indoors or letting it out on a patio, but not letting it free roam. better for our wildlife, but it's also much safer for your cat. There's no risk that it's going to be kidnapped or hit by a car, or get some sort of injury out in the wild. So cat attacks, especially if untreated, cats have bacteria in their saliva. Like if you ever get scratched by a cat, it's like just blows up, right? So it's a very, very, very dangerous, especially to birds. So if these birds don't get antibiotics, there's like a 90% fatality rate. So even if you just barely get nicked or bit, you're a bird, you barely get nicked or bit by a cat, chances are that that's going to be actually fatal for you. For birds, not for people. Or else, I don't know, I don't think we'd all be here. Another one, orphaned, or are they? This cause of injury we actually call kidnapping, because these are completely healthy animals that are out in the wild, don't need our care. Mom and dad are still around, but people primarily, it's the little fledgling birds. People think they need help, they'll bring it in. And we're stuck with this perfectly healthy bird that would have been way better off in the wild. But always calling us before attempting to rescue an animal, just to make sure it actually does need help. When baby birds fledge, when they leave the nest, they have about a 1 or 2 day period when they are on the ground, they're hopping around, they look very helpless, they're not fully feathered like a normal bird may be. But mom and dad are around, they're very territorial, so anything tries to come near that baby, you're gonna get like attacked by a mom mockingbird. So always calling us as well, and if an animal does need help, we're able to kind of guide you through what to do next, how to help get it into care for us. So orphaned or kidnapped, especially around like baby season, which is also right now, which is fabulous because baby season and migration pair up wonderfully. So right now we are so busy. I think we have 132, as of this morning, animals in our care. In our 900 square foot hospital. So but probably around half the size of this room, smaller than this room. So we're very kind of jam-packed in there. So now I'm just going to go into a couple unique cases. So not very, very common, but still kind of human-related cases here. Does anybody know what a glue trap is? Has anyone seen them? Know someone that's used them, maybe? So glue traps are a very inhumane method of pest control. What it is, it's a very heavy piece of cardstock paper with the tackiest, stickiest substance, gluiest substance you've ever touched. If you accidentally touch it, you're gonna be you're gonna need goo off for 2 hours trying to get it off your hand. And the idea is that you put a little bit of bait in the middle, an unsuspecting mouse or a rat comes, tries to get it, they get stuck, and a lot of people will then just throw it away with the live animal on it. So very inhumane. And also they don't discriminate, right? You don't know if you're a mouse or a rat or you're a piece of paper. So this is a case, these people had hired a pest control company to come out and try to get the iguanas out of the yard. So what these people did is they made this ginormous carpet, basically, of all of these sticky pads, put some bait in the middle, and within an hour we got a call because the homeowner came outside and found these 2 birds. You can see this is the cardinal on this side, 2 birds on the same mat there. A northern cardinal and an ovenbird, which is one of our most commonly seen migratory birds. They live here full time too, but we have a lot of snowbirds as well. So like I said, very, very sticky. You can see this poor bird ripped all of his tail feathers out trying to escape, and by trying to escape, he got even further stuck. So we are able to use some oils and some powders to eventually free them, but a lot of times we have to cut these feathers. There's just no way to get them off. If we did get them off, they would just be trashed anyway. The bird wouldn't be able to use them. So thankfully, both of these birds were able to be released, but it took quite a while because they had to fully regenerate all of those feathers, and that's very, very energy intensive for your body. If you have 4 broken bones, your body's going to be a lot more than 1 broken bone. So if you have 10 feathers you have to regrow at the same time, that's your body's putting so much resources, so many nutrients and energy into that. So these birds were able to be released. Of course, we educated the homeowners. They were very upset, vowed to never use glue traps again, but just kind of something that most people don't think about, just, another just human-related impact on our wildlife. Rodenticide poisoning, a second kind of form of pest control. Rodenticide are those little black traps you see around. They're like little black boxes with a hole. Those are rodenticide traps. They are all over, everywhere in the world, basically. They're definitely not just a Miami thing. So what happens is it's this attractive smelling bait. A mouse or a rat will go inside, eat it, but it doesn't immediately get poisoned and die. It will then leave and sometimes like bring the food back to its little family, and then it's sad. And what happens if you eat a poisoned mushroom? You're gonna get poisoned, right? So these these hawks are just flying around. They see maybe a slightly weakened mouse, maybe the rodenticide starting to kick in. He thinks, that is easy lunch, cool. He eats a poisoned mouse. Now this hawk is also poisoned. And a lot of these act as, they're like neurotoxins as well, but they also act as like anticoagulants in a way, so that your body, the tissues just start to kind of break down. So this is a hawk. It's classic signs. Super swollen eyes here. His mouth was so tacky that it was just like, stringy, very, very dry. He couldn't even hold his head up. He was just like slumping his head, really, really sad. So the way that we kind of help this is we immediately give them activated charcoal to try to get rid of anything that may be left in their stomach, any poisons, and then just fluids. We give them IV fluids, we give them subcutaneous fluids, we give them oral fluids to try to flush it out. So that was this bird 13 days later. Yeah, so in a miraculous recovery from his initial state here. But just something that people don't necessarily think about the consequences. You have some rats in your yard or in your shed, and you're like, I don't want them, I will use rodenticide. You never really think about the next step after that. So it's, you're killing little mice and rats, which is also sad, but you could easily be killing wildlife around you as well. This is kind of a cool one. So this bird actually came to us from a landfill. We think that it had flown over so they burn a lot of the trash here. So it might have flown over the methane like exhaust and totally singed his feathers there. So this bird was in care for us for quite a while, and what we did is something called imping. So imping a bird's feathers is kind of like giving them it's like a feather transplant in a way. We don't actually like remove the feather and then put a new one in. What we'll do is, so the feather here, right, it's like attached all the way up in the body. That's my hand. All the way up to the body. So we will cut the feather off right next to where it's growing out of the skin. And what we're going to do is we take a healthy donor feather from the same species that unfortunately didn't make it, but was able to donate its feathers to another bird that may need them. And what we'll do is it's kind of a basic procedure, but bird feathers are actually hollow in the shaft. So we can take the tiny little nub of the old feather, this brand new hollow feather, and then we use super glue and a toothpick to secure them together. And we have to make sure that it's the same exact feather, so every feather has a number. I think it's 1 through 12 on the tail. We have to make sure that they're all the perfect angle so that they fit together. It's very precise, and it also takes a little while, and this bird was under anesthesia the whole time, so we have to work very quickly because we don't want a bird under anesthesia for an extended period. So if you do this to a couple feathers, maybe 4 or 5, you can release that bird. But in this case, so many of these feathers had to be completely reconstructed that the odds of a few of them falling off in the wild, some of the super glue not sticking, was too high, and we wouldn't want to release this bird with a pretty high chance of him maybe losing those feathers, not being able to fly super well. So he actually was transferred for long-term care because he had to wait over a year to fully molt all of those broken feathers out to grow a new pair. So why do we even bother? Why do we do all that work if we're just going to wait for him to grow new feathers, right? So I compare it to if you were a marathon runner, right? You run a marathon every month, and then all of a sudden you have to go in the hospital, and you're sitting in the hospital with a leg brace on for 6 months. It's going to take you a long time to be able to get back in shape to run a marathon every month, right? If you're just laid up, no exercise for 6 months. So what this imping allows these birds to do is stay flighted, be able to go outdoors as soon as possible, and be able to still fly to maintain those flight muscles, to maintain their fitness, so that as soon as those new feathers are in, like, he's out of there. He doesn't need to spend any time regrowing those muscles, especially the pectoral muscles have to be so strong in order to like flop the wings down. So this is just to allow them to have as normal like activity level as possible while they're in care. And he was eventually released, but it took over a year. So another case here as a result of hook and line is a pouch tear. So you can see this poor pelican here. So he's intubated. He's under anesthesia right now. So that's what this tube is here. This is his trachea. So he's being intubated for surgery. And I believe this took over 55 stitches to close up. And this bird, it was a very fresh wound, and it happened because a fisherman had accidentally caught it. And then as he tried to like remove it, reel it in, it just tore up the whole pouch, and very, very sensitive. Of course, you're a pelican, you can't hunt or survive if you've got a giant hole in your pouch. Also miraculously fast healers though, so this was taken, I think it was 3 weeks later. It had totally constricted. The stitches had kind of come out as it was healing, but this will also really contract over time to essentially be gone. So this is him outside, very happy. Just before he was released. This is a juvenile bird as well. You can see he's got like this brown coloration. And this is another reason we can never feed wildlife. Because, again, this new bird, he's learning from a very early age that people are great. I'm going to hang around piers all the time. And then this is what happens. But he was also able to be released. I show you really sad pictures, but all of them are released so that it's not too sad. This was the craziest case that I've ever seen. I've been with Pelican Harbor for 6 years, and this was the most wild case. We received a report of these 2 turtles that were tied together. They had small holes drilled in their shell, and they were actually chained together. We kind of unwrapped this bundle here. We found dolls and cinnamon and photos, so we are led to believe that this is some sort of religious ritual. And one of these is a non-native turtle, but because of kind of the severity of this case and the fact that it was a case of abuse, we did decide to try to treat both patients. Unfortunately, the non-native turtle did not make it. These are both freshwater turtles, but they were found in the bay, floating for who knows how long. So they both had very severe respiratory infections, and unfortunately the red-eared slider here just wasn't able to make it past that injury. But over 2 months later, the cooter was able to be released to go and continue his life. But it's just incredible. You have no idea what's gonna come in through the doors every day. Like I said, around 5 or 6. During peak season, sometimes it's 10, 15 animals a day. You never know what's gonna come through. This guy got electrocuted by a live power line. Also had to be imped, but I don't have before and after. I just think he's kind of cute. Deep horizon water spill as well, so not all of our birds are from local areas. We got transferred around a dozen baby pelicans from Deepwater Horizon. We were able to have our ambassador pelicans, who are permanent residents with us, help kind of raise them to adulthood, and then we transferred them back and released them back, I think off the Gulf, into the Gulf. And then this is what we do it for, right? All of those birds, thankfully, were cases of ones that were released. This is actually on Key Biscayne here. This is a great white heron. I think he's the only one around here, so if you've ever seen a bird that looks like a great egret, but it's a lot bigger, it's probably this guy, because there's really only one I've ever seen. And they're very uncommon. Which bridge? He's usually by Yeah, kind of. I like the first bridge. Yeah, they look very similar to great egrets. They're both white, they're both very tall, they both have long legs, they both have a yellow bill, so it's kind of difficult to tell a difference, but we do everything from, great white herons to tiny little sanderlings, hawks, pelicans. Of course, we cannot treat or we cannot save every animal that comes through our doors as much as we try. By the time many of these patients are getting to us, they are already kind of knocking on death's door, and the best thing we can do for them, they didn't ask for this. We're not going to just prolong their suffering if we know that their prognosis is grave. Also, I had mentioned those federal permits earlier. There are certain injuries that we have no choice. The federal permits absolutely require us to humanely euthanize some injuries in some cases. And that's due to chronic pain and just ethics as well. Trying to even attempt to treat some of the injuries that we see would just be inhumane and prolong their suffering. But we do it all for these releases. If you join the email list as well, we do public releases a lot. So if you're on Key Biscayne, I'll be able to go see your zip code and then send out like a big email, hey, we're doing a release near you. We just did one of a Werderman's heron a little while ago. So that is my presentation. Thank you. Yeah, so we do incredible work. Obviously, it's only thanks to wonderful donors, whether that be foundations, grants, or just compassionate people like you. So I do want to put in a little plug here. We are having our annual fundraising gala in 1 week. It's at the Rusty Pelican, and it is so much fun. We have our keynote speaker, Jeff Corwin, this year. If you remember the Corwin experience, he's been on Disney Channel, Nat Geo, and just recently we were actually featured in his newest series, Wild Florida. So he's incredible, so nice. People are always like, don't meet your heroes, but he was so sweet, so nice. So he's going to be joining us. It's right here at the Rusty Pelican. I imagine most of you live around here, so if you want to join us, I dropped a couple invitations off on each table, and I also am going to throw up a little QR code here. If you just open your camera app and point it towards this, there should be like a little yellow bar on the bottom that you can click. And so I don't want you to get sticker shock, because it's not, it's not just your average Thursday night out. So the tickets are $350 a person, but I challenge you to consider it a $350 donation towards our incredible life-saving work that we do every single day of the year. We have people in there on Christmas. I've worked on Christmas Eve before. So in exchange for your generous tax-deductible donation, you get to come to a 3-hour party with an open bar and live string music and a fun dinner, and we have a silent auction with lots of art and experiences. So if you're thinking about it, you can go on our website too. There's tons of information on the website, or you can scan the QR code on your tables, but I would love to have you there. It's tons of fun. You can get dressed up, fun Thursday night out. And then that's it. Do we have any questions before I bring out my special guests? Yes, so the question is about mammals. That's a good point. I only included birds on here. So we do treat mammals as well. Our two most common are gray squirrels and Virginia opossums. Very occasionally we'll get a gray fox in, but they're not very common since Miami's so urban. But we treat 200 squirrels and over 300 possums every year. So lots and lots of mammals as well. Yes?
Watching the screen, I thought to myself, these are God's creatures, and they are doing God's work.
Oh, thank you.
So bless you and all the people at Pelican Harbor Station.
Thank you. Thank you. Aw. No, I'm very, very lucky to work for such an amazing organization where you can actually see the impact of your work every day. That's a good question. Well, we are open, like I said, every day of the year from 9 to 5. So if you'd like, you can come visit us. We're up on 79th Street Causeway on the Pelican Harbor, in the Pelican Harbor Marina. But yeah, you can do a little walking tour of our outdoor enclosures where the animals go right before they're about to be released. They get, like I said, their fitness back. They get used to being outside in the rain and eating on their own instead of having their beautiful plate of food provided to them inside. They have to, you know, remind themselves they're wild animals. So yeah, please visit. We have behind the scenes tours as well. We have seabird cruises around twice a month. Once a month they leave from Crandon right here, and it's a 2-hour birding cruise. In the beginning, we go over to the Crandon Rookery. It's BYOB, so again, you can have it a fun date night. And then as the sun sets, we go around Stiltsville. We learn about the history of the key. It's really fun. So that's all on our website as well under events. Yes?
You're not typical marine biologist. You're talking about expertise. What kind of expertise?
So the question is, what kind of training do you need to be a wildlife rehabilitator? So it's really kind of a niche subject. I personally studied wildlife conservation and ecology, but that's also not a very common major. It just so happened, I'm from New Jersey. Any other northerners? Nice, New Jersey. So I went to the University of Delaware, and I just happened upon, wildlife rehab through an internship. So it's really all experience-based. It helps if you have like ecology or wildlife, biology kind of experience, but really just getting your foot in the door with an internship. I started as an intern and then was hired part-time, actually moved to Miami for the job at Pelican Harbor. So it's really just getting your foot in there and then just on-the-job experience. Yes?
Does it take that particular one that you're speaking about to go from New Jersey to Biscayne?
That's a great question. The question is, how long does it take for like the average migratory bird to make their journey? I don't want to give you the wrong information, so let me look. But it's not that long. It's like they are hours every night. Most birds migrate at night. That's another thing I didn't mention. It's cooler weather at night. All of their predators are kind of asleep, so the hawks that are gonna be trying to eat them are asleep, so the birds migrate at night. And they also use the stars to navigate. Really incredible, so cool. But at night, especially in the cities, there's lights too, right? So like the light pollution at night, the windows all kind of contributes, but not long, a week, 2 weeks. Yes? So the green parrots are not native. They're probably monk parrots or Quaker parrots. Loud. They're probably Quaker parrots. They're like this big. Oh, smaller? I'm not sure, but we don't have any native parrots in Miami. The Seaquarium. We're not affiliated with them at all. I'm not like very familiar with their operations or where their animals will go, but I imagine that they'll all go to accredited zoos or sanctuaries. I know they just transferred one of their manatees, or a pair of their manatees, I think, to another institution. So I'm sure that they'll get it handled and make sure that the animals are in good hands.
Say in the Dobags Park.
I'm pretty darn good at identifying birds at this point, so yeah. Not a specific one to look for. Migratory birds, I would say the ovenbird is they're probably all over the place. Cardinals. Grackles, the boat-tailed grackles, those birds, they kind of look like crows, but they have like the huge fanned tail. Those are boat-tailed grackles. If you're more near the water, like tons of herons and ibis. Yeah.
What's the difference between an ibis and crane?
So they're all ibis and crane and heron, all different species. They have like different morphological traits, different genetics, different feeding patterns, different habitats. But yeah, there's all kinds of great guides. Like if you get like a South Florida bird guide and you flip through it, you'll be able to kind of.
One quick question. Who is the beautiful white one that walks around like elegant?
The beautiful kind of white birds that go like that, those are probably great egrets. Teeny tiny little like necks that are just like, yeah, probably great egrets. Yeah, I like them too. Yes. So she was suggesting another way to, kind of help reduce the window strikes is just to, cut your own. I'm sure you can buy them online. Yeah. So just outlines of a bird that may look like, or that is a predator. So an outline of a flying hawk, an outline of a flying owl. Then the birds are going to totally avoid that area. So that's a great suggestion. Totally. Yeah. No. Introduce it to Miami and then the country. No, but thank you. I feel like pelicans nowadays are so daring. Like, I don't think that a horn would deter a pelican. I really don't nowadays. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I feel like these pelicans nowadays are like, they're bad, yeah. And they're just so used to people, and they're used to noise. They're used to the boats blaring music with bass and like, you know. All right, who wants to meet our special guests? Okay, bringing out Maggie. Maggie is our Ambassador Virginia opossum. I had mentioned that we treat over 300 possums a year. Majority of them are babies that are orphaned. So that's what happened with Maggie here. She was brought to us when she was still in her mom's pouch. Unfortunately, her mom had gotten hit by a car and killed. And so Maggie here, all of her siblings were fine. We started, you know, raising them to the age where they can be released. But Maggie here wasn't really developing well. When she walks, she kind of has like a little gait. Opossums are prey, not predators. So if you're an opossum, you can't run really well, you can't climb really well, you're going to be easy food. So we deemed her appropriate to be a permanent ambassador animal with us, an educational ambassador. And again, we've had her since a teeny tiny baby, like really like since this big. So she's very used to people. So I'm going to bust a couple of myths about opossums. One is that opossums get rabies. That is a myth. Opossums cannot get rabies. Their body temperature is just a couple degrees lower than ours, but low enough that it actually cannot harbor the rabies virus. So they can't get it, they can't transmit it, they can't give it. So that's one myth. She's also fantastic for the environment, so she will eat lots of ticks. Possums are very, very clean, yeah. So if you have a cat, you know they spend hours and hours and hours a day bathing themselves, grooming themselves. Opossums are the same way. She actually has like a specialized little nail that's like, acts like a comb. But they're like down on the grass and the leaves, they're eating things. So they get a lot of bugs and ticks and stuff on them, but since they're so clean, they're constantly grooming themselves, they can eat up to 5,000 ticks in a season. So especially from the people up north, you know how bad ticks are. So they're amazing at helping reduce pests. If we want, Rosella will bring her around, and if you want to use 2 fingers, you can feel her. So they're North America's only marsupial, meaning they have a pouch like a kangaroo or a koala, and they also have the most teeth of any mammal in North America. So they look very scary when they're upset or startled, but they're really not aggressive. They're not going to go and attack. They're going to drool. They're going to hiss. They're going to like look all scary, but they're really not. They're not going to attack your dog or your kid or anything. She lives outdoors in one of our enclosures in a very fluffy bed with. Yeah. Possums are omnivores. They will eat basically anything. So out in the wild, they'll eat your cockroaches, they'll eat your rotting mangoes, all the stuff you don't want in your yard, and ticks, yeah. With us, she eats fruits, vegetables, mice, she eats worms, she eats fish, anything and everything, really. Up north, the possums tend to be bigger because they need to be able to withstand the cold weather, but they can get to the size of a small house cat. Yeah. So if you guys do want to touch Maggie, just be sure to please only touch her on her back. She can get a little easily startled if you touch her around her head. So yeah, just like her lower back. She's very soft, and again, she's super clean. She's probably cleaner than your dog or your cat. This is Rosario, and she is a Florida box turtle. There are eastern box turtles all up and down the East Coast, but the Florida box turtle is a specific subspecies. And she was actually found in a parking garage. There were some kids that had her that were trying to break her shell in the parking garage. And so someone saw, was able to bring it into us. But turtles, they have a very, very small range, and they remember where they come from, and if they are placed somewhere outside of that range, they'll spend forever trying to get back. So since we had no idea where she came from, and there's not really great habitat around Miami for box turtles, she's now a permanent ambassador with us, and she has a boyfriend. His name is Umberto, and really though, because she has started laying eggs. We sometimes have little teeny tiny box turtles that we're able to keep for a little bit, and then we'll go out to like larger areas of land and release them to hopefully continue on into the wild. So Rosella's gonna come bring Rosario around. She's very sweet. If you look at her shell as well, almost like a fingerprint, every pattern on a box turtle is a little different. So no other box turtle has her exact shell coloration.